In this lesson, we will have an overview of PLC hardware, including the CPU and I/O modules. By completing this lesson, you would be able to understand and describe CPU function and structure, compile and download the program, CPU control and operation modes, and I/O modules. A standard PLC system has three parts: input modules, controller or CPU, and output modules. Input modules collect data from sensors and push buttons and convert them to digital numbers. Controller updates the code loaded in the CPU with the data received from input modules, then executes the code and generates new results. And then output modules pick up the updated results and convert them to different forms of electrical signals to control devices such as relays and actuators. Let's take a closer look at the CPU. The Central Processing Unit, or CPU for short, is the key part in a PLC system. The CPU processes the inputs, executes the logic program, and generates the outputs. The program is normally stored on a memory card. Depending on the type of application, it may happen that there is no direct physical input or output in a PLC system, but you should always have a CPU, because somebody needs to run the code. To program a PLC, you must connect the CPU via a programmer device. Back in the days, every PLC had a special programmer and connecting cables. Now, everything has been simplified. Almost all PLCs have a standard Ethernet port, which you can connect to using a regular RJ45 Ethernet cable. Looking at PLC catalogs, you will find multiple models of CPUs with different processing power and memory sizes. That gives you the flexibility and freedom to select the right one for your application. In the CPU, there are various types of memory. When working with PLCs, you must understand how CPU memory is organized and how to use it in your program. When you load your program into CPU, it will use the space in user memory. Your program usually contains some code as well as data tables. This memory most often is in the form of a memory card, like an SD card, or a flash storage that can keep the code even when the power is off. By changing the CPU mode to run, operating system will transfer a copy of executable parts of the program into the RAM, allocate memory for variables, and initialize them. Keep in mind that power cycling or restarting the controller will erase the content of the RAM. That means if the CPU goes to stop, all RAM variables will be reset. Most often, you cannot change the size of the RAM in a PLC, so make sure to pick a CPU that can fit your application. Each CPU has a dedicated memory space for inputs and outputs, as well as timers and counters. All I/O signals are communicated to I/O cards via this memory area. The CPU will also record the status logs and system information such as date and time in this memory. Every CPU may offer a certain part of its memory in a retentive format. The content stored in retentive memory is not lost by a CPU restart or power cycle. Retentive memory is a good choice to save calibration data and recipe parameters, and also keeping track of machine working hours. But please note that every time you download an application, the content of your retentive memory will be deleted. The majority of CPUs are powered by 24-volt DC. A 24-volt power supply is usually found in the PLC hardware family. Most of the time, the power source is either 110 or 220 volt AC. This will be converted by a PLC power supply module to a stable 24 volt DC output. Since the CPU is the most critical part of the PLC system and usually the most expensive piece, it is better to invest in a reliable power supply. Normally, the best option is the one that PLC manufacturer offers. By default, all other PLC modules use a 24-volt DC power supply unless advised otherwise. Calculating the required power consumption and sizing a suitable power supply is part of the work you must consider in the PLC system design phase. Regardless of the PLC you use in your application, the PLC manufacturer will usually provide you with software to write and transfer the program to the CPU. To ensure that the written code is executable, first you need to compile the code. During the compilation process, the compiler verifies that all settings, variables, and instructions are error-free and compatible with the configured hardware. If the compiler reports any errors, you won't be able to transfer the program into the PLC. You must fix each error one by one and recompile till you receive the message, "Compile successful." Once you get the code compiled, you can transfer it to the CPU. The most common method is to connect via an Ethernet cable and activate the transfer. All you have to do is to connect the CPU to your computer running the PLC software through an Ethernet cable. After that, you open the PLC programming tool. They all have an option to scan the network. Start searching and you may find an unconfigured network node with a factory assigned IP address. You can check it against the MAC address printed on the CPU. In some CPUs, Ethernet ports are equipped with two LEDs in green and yellow colors. When the green LED lit, it's a sign that the CPU is connected to another device, like the programming laptop. The yellow LED flashes when there is a communication. Aside from direct cable connections, some PLCs support other methods of program transfer. That would be useful in specific situations. Consider the scenario where a PLC is on a machine at a customer's factory in another country. As a result, you don't have direct physical access to it, traveling is costly and time-consuming, and sharing the program file isn't an option either. Using the PLC programming tool, you can transfer the program to a memory card compatible with the CPU and ship the card to the client. They can turn off the power, insert the card into the CPU memory slot, and power it on. That will activate the program in the PLC. Also, with some PLCs, you can simply convert the compiled code to a binary file and share it with the end user. They can put it either on a memory card or transfer it to the CPU with a free and easy-to-use tool from PLC Toolbox package. So it is important to verify availability of these features when you are selecting a PLC system. To operate a machine that is controlled by a PLC, you need to make sure that the CPU is in the run mode. In run mode, the CPU executes the logic program and as a result, PLC outputs are active. The opposite of run mode is stop mode, where the CPU doesn't run the code and the outputs are disabled. Stop and run are control modes. That means you as a PLC programmer can switch from one to another if you want to. However, there are specific conditions that must be met before a PLC can be switched to run mode. Here are the most important requirements. First, hardware must be properly configured, and then program should be error-free. Depending on the PLC manufacturer's design, a PLC may have other modes like fault or service mode. The CPU switches to these modes in reaction to incorrect loaded configuration or an error in logic program. For example, if a divide to 0 happens in the program, the CPU considers it as an error and goes to fault mode. Fault may happen also because of hardware issues, like the CPU losing communication to input modules. There are several reasons that may cause a PLC failure, and you can find them in the PLC manual. The other mode seen in some PLCs is the maintenance or service mode. Let me explain this with an example. Consider the case where you created a PLC application a few years ago and now you want to use it again. You put together the PLC modules, power up the system, load the application, and put it into run mode. But you see that the CPU switches to service or maintenance mode. The reason is that the PLC components, like every other piece of electronic hardware these days, are equipped with firmware or operating system, which is typically updated every 6 months. So you need to make sure that the configured application is in line with the hardware you are using. Otherwise, the CPU detects the mismatch and switches to service mode to avoid any unwanted behavior. Most of the time, you can solve the service mode issue simply by updating the firmware. A PLC typically interacts with the outside world through input-output signals, or I/O for short. The I/O system provides the physical connection between the equipment and the PLC. I/O signals are divided into two groups of digital and analog signals. Incoming signals are handled by input modules and outgoing signals by output modules. So in total, most of the time, you deal with the following 4 types of electronic modules to process or generate input and output signals: digital input, digital output, analog input, and analog output. Most of the time, they are referred to as DI, DO, AI, and AO. Next, we will have a brief overview of each one. Digital input module. Most often, digital inputs are signals from switches, push buttons, digital sensors, and auxiliary contacts from relays. Sometimes a device reports its status to the PLC by sending a digital signal. A digital signal will be interpreted with on and off states in the card, and therefore it can be presented with only one bit, 1 for on state and 0 for off state. Each channel has an indicator LED that turns on when the input signal is active. The standard digital input is a 2-wire 24-volt DC. One wire represents the voltage level and the other is the common or 0. The input channel electronic processor verifies the signal level, and if it exceeds a certain voltage level, reports the on status by sending a bit with value of 1 to the CPU. If the signal level is lower than the threshold, the bit with value 0 is sent. Digital output module. Relay coil and lamps are good examples for frequently seen digital outputs. Digital outputs used to turn on a device such as a motor or open a solenoid valve. Most often, electrical circuit has an interposing relay which interfaces the PLC to the device. The standard digital output is a 2-wire 24-volt DC. One wire represents the voltage level and the other one is the common or 0. If the output is on, there is a 24-volt DC voltage, and in case of off signal, there is 0 volt. Digital output used sometimes in a form of dry contact. That means a loop is closed without being powered. Analog input module. An analog input card converts a voltage or current into a digitally equivalent number that can be understood by the PLC. Examples of analog devices are pressure transducers, flow meters, and thermocouples for temperature readings. A standard analog card offers compatible electronic system to measure and convert the analog signal to digital. Typical types are 0 to 20 mA or 4 to 20 mA, 0 to 5 volt DC, minus 10 to plus 10 volt DC, millivolt for thermocouples, and resistance for sensors like PT100. Analog modules are offered with different precisions, which is defined in bits. The basic cards offer a 8-bit precision, and a more advanced card can go up to 16 bits. An analog input channel provides a raw value in form of number. To make this value meaningful, it needs to be scaled to the span of the respective instrument. For example, a 0 to 5 volt signal from a level transmitter is mapped to a digital range of 0 to 32,676 in a 16 bits analog input card, or in a similar way to represent the pressure measurement in a span of 0 to 500 liter, a simple scaling program would be implemented in the PLC application to scale the raw value to the engineering range. Analog output module. Analog output cards operate similar to analog input cards, but in opposite direction. An analog output module will convert a digital number sent by the CPU to an equal voltage or current. Typical output signals can range from 0 to 10 volt DC or 4 to 20 milliamp, and are used to drive devices such as mass flow controllers, pressure regulators, and adjusting rotary speed of motors. For example, you have a fan in your mechanism and would like to control the speed. The fan ramps up by increasing the numbers and stops by 0 voltage, which is equal to number 0.